everyone, this is Tyler Ford in Tucson, Arizona with eXp Realty, and today I'm going to be talking about buyer closing costs. We get a lot of questions from buyers, especially first-time home buyers, trying to understand what their costs are going to be. So what I'm going to be talking about on this video is what are buyer closing costs, what fees can a buyer expect, how much will buyer closing costs be, can a home buyer avoid closing costs, which is a great question. And then lastly, we're going to show you how you can save some money on your closing costs. So first off, what are buyer closing costs? So buyer closing costs are all the fees associated with buying a home. They end up showing up on your closing statement, and they're negotiable between buyer and seller on the purchase contract. So a really good agent that's representing a buyer can really help you avoid a lot of the fees that exist when it comes to buyer closing costs. So next question is what are buyer closing costs? What are those fees? So down payment, although it's not a closing cost, that's going to show up on your closing statement. So that's part of the big picture of the money that you're going to have to come with, but it's not considered a closing cost. So you have things like the property appraisal, you have termite inspection, you have the home inspection, and then you have escrow fee, and that's what the escrow company, title company charges you to facilitate the closing. And then you have things like the lender's title policy, and that's a title policy that if there is a lien or encumbrance that comes back, then the lender is secured in terms of if there's any liabilities and something were to happen, it's a title policy that would kick in to cover everything, so the lender's not in a situation where they're liable or they could lose the money that they loaned you. Then you have HOA fees, transfer fees, and those are something that's negotiable on the HOA addendum. So if you're buying a home in an HOA, your fees can actually be more expensive. But again, a good agent's going to help you negotiate those fees down. Loan charges, this is a good one. So if you're buying a home and paying cash, your fees as a buyer are dramatically reduced. But if you're buying a home and getting a mortgage, you've got a bunch of lender fees, whether it's you're paying a point to get the best rate, you've got loan processing fees. So there's a breakdown of all these different lender fees. And I would recommend that when you talk to your lender, you want to get pre-qualified, make sure you understand what all those fees are. Then you have hazard insurance, so that's your homeowner's insurance, and that leads me to the next set of fees, and that's your prepaids and impounds. And so they're gonna impound some things: property taxes, your hazard insurance. You've got to pay the whole year up front, and then they impound a couple months because your first mortgage payment's typically not due until 2 months down the road once you close. So there's about 14 months of prepaids on the hazard insurance, and then you've got recording fees. So there's a list, and again, on the blog post, if you look down, we itemize each one of those fees. The next thing here is how much will your closing costs be? So as a buyer, your closing costs, depending on whether you're getting a mortgage, paying cash, could be dramatically different. So anywhere, I would say $2,000 on the low side, up to about $7,500 on the high side in terms of your closing costs as a buyer. And the next question is, can a buyer avoid closing costs? And the answer is absolutely yes. So when you are working with your agent and submitting an offer, a lot of times what buyers are asking for is what we call seller concessions, where the seller will actually give you either a specific amount or a percentage that would actually go towards paying all of your closing costs, prepaids and impounds. And so depending on what kind of home you're buying and the amount of money that you have, and let's say you just have just enough money for the down payment, you can negotiate and have the buyer pay all of your closing costs. So it's certainly something that can be done. And lastly, how can we help you save money? So if you use us to buy or sell a home, we'll give you $500 credit towards your closing costs that will show up on the closing statement. So we'll give you $500 credit. And then we also have a moving van. So the one thing that a lot of agents, lenders, we don't talk about is the cost to move. It can be rather expensive. And so one of the things that we've done is we have a moving van. If you use us to buy or sell a home, you can use our moving truck for free. So hopefully that helps. Again, read down or itemizes each one of the closing costs. If you have any questions, reach out to us at any time.